Architectural Outcast.
Welcome to the Architectural Outcast exploration of Star Trek, the original series. I'm Randy, and we're going to begin where it all started, back with Season 1, Episode 1, The Man Trap. A quick overview of the plot. The Enterprise is sent on a routine medical checkup of an archaeological site on a remote planet. The complication is that one of the archaeologists, Nancy Crater, is an old flame of old Doc McCoy. Tragically, Nancy has died over a year ago and has been replaced by a shape-shifting creature that needs to eat salt to survive. And its preferred source of salt? People. It's people! Oh, wait a minute. Wrong sci-fi. The creature manages to get onto the Enterprise by taking the form of one of the crew members, and then has to be stopped before it kills again. This episode has 3 unanswered questions, 3 conundrums that the audience is left to wrestle with. First, there's the behavior of Dr. Crater. Second, there's the philosophical question of how do we know somebody is who we think they are? And third, what special consideration does the last of their kind deserve? From the moment we meet Professor Crater, he's antagonistic and belligerent. He accuses Kirk of being a tyrant, abusing his authority. He claims that McCoy is allowing jealousy to cloud his judgment. He insists that all he and his wife want are to be left alone. So everybody get out. Oh, by the way, leave lots of salt before you go, though. When the creature killed for the first time and then tried to cover it up by claiming that the crew member ate a poisonous plant, Professor Crater knew exactly what was going on and tried to help the creature cover it up. When the creature killed for the second and third time, Professor Crater ran away, went looking for the creature, trying to help it hide. When Kirk and Spock returned to the planet, determined to get some answers once and for all, old Crater had gone 1930s gangster, fortified position, blasting anything that moves, screaming, "You'll never take me alive, coppers!" It's only after he's been disarmed and subdued that Professor Crater comes clean, tells everybody what's going on. That over a year ago, this creature had killed his wife. And yeah, he was upset because he did love his wife, but he realized that the creature was the last of its kind, and it was just doing what it needed to do to survive. And seeing as how it was a shapeshifter, it took the form of Nancy, and they just continued on as if nothing had happened. Once the creature got on the Enterprise, it killed again. And when Kirk directly asked Professor Crater, "Can you identify the creature when it's pretending to be somebody else?" and Crater said yes, he could. And when Kirk said, "Will you help us stop it?" Crater, knowing that the creature was pretending to be McCoy sitting next to him, refused to help in any way. Kirk ordered Spock and Dr. McCoy to administer truth serum to Professor Crater. But before they could carry out their orders, the creature, disguised as McCoy, sucker punched Mr. Spock. Fortunately for Spock, his biology was different, so the creature couldn't get his salt. But the creature did kill Professor Crater. We're left with a couple of big questions here. Why was Professor Crater acting in such an irrational manner? Why was he willing to go to such lengths to protect the murderer of his wife, even when that murderer started murdering more people? And then why did the creature murder Professor Crater? There are some clues. Professor Crater and Nancy have been doing archaeological work on that planet for about 5 years, and for most of the time, they've been sending out regular shipments of artifacts. But about a year ago, right around when Nancy died, the amount of artifacts went way down. So what happened? Why did Professor Crater suddenly stop doing his job? Well, Kirk addresses that question. You have a shape-shifting creature who can also read minds. It could become anybody you imagine. Your wife, your friend, your lover, anybody. It would go a long way to explain why Professor Crater was so anxious to have everybody hit the bricks. They're interfering with his happy time. So why did the creature kill Professor Crater? We're told that Crater captured the creature right after his wife's death, and he was enraged and wanted to kill the creature. But then he learned it was the last of its kind. So what did he do? He didn't report his wife's death to the authorities. He stopped doing his job, and when the authorities showed up, he claimed the creature was his wife and then called everybody mean names and tried to run them off as fast as possible. The question becomes, was Crater being manipulated by the creature, or had he enslaved it and was forcing it to act out his fantasies? We'll never know for sure, but one thing we do know is that once Crater had the opportunity to separate himself from the creature, even up until the point of being threatened with truth serum, he refused to help capture it in any way. Looking an awful lot like he enslaved it. The second conundrum, if somebody can shapeshift and read minds, they could impersonate anyone, raising the question, how would we know that they are who we think they are? Now, this is a question most people don't want to think about, because the short answer is, we don't know. We have to take it on faith. This goes back to the problem that Descartes raised. How do we know we can trust our senses? How do we know our senses tell us meaningful information about the world around us? Now, even if we accept Descartes' solution that yes, in fact, we can trust our senses, we still have a major problem. We interact with somebody. They leave. They then come back. How do we know it's the same person who's come back? To illustrate my point, we need to look at the work of the Irish philosopher George Berkeley. Y'all remember the question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Berkeley would say, what forest? No one's there, so it doesn't exist. Now, Berkeley isn't claiming that the universe is dependent upon our senses for its existence or some other social construct BS. What he's arguing is that once something leaves the range of our senses, as far as we're concerned, we have no way of knowing, based upon our own senses, if it still exists. So practically speaking, it doesn't exist. So when somebody leaves our presence, leaves the range of our senses, and then returns, we have no way of knowing for a fact, a priori, that it's the same person. We have to take it on faith. Now, there aren't a whole bunch of mind-reading shapeshifters running around that we know of. So for 99% of the time, taking on faith that somebody is who we think they are works out just fine. Just a few years after The Man Trap, John Carpenter came out with The Thing, arguably one of the greatest psychological horror movies ever made, which explored how much we take on faith our interactions with others, and how quickly things would go sideways if you threw a malevolent shapeshifter into the mix. And then there's Heinlein's The Puppet Masters, which showed you wouldn't even need a shapeshifter. All you would need is a creature capable of possessing somebody's mind, and how quickly that would destabilize society. You wouldn't be able to trust anyone. Finally, we come to the last big question of the episode, the last conundrum, and it's a two-parter. What are you allowed to do to guarantee your right to survive? And if you're the last of your kind, does that change the equation in any way? Professor Crater and the creature itself, in the form of Dr. McCoy, makes the argument that we can't condemn the creature because it's just doing what it needs to do to survive. And because it's the last of its kind, we need to protect it at all costs. Any rancher or farmer who raises livestock in an area where they're releasing wolves back into the environment knows how quickly the whole "you can't punish a creature for just trying to survive by following his instincts" gets real quick. I would think that most of us would agree that in theory, all creatures have a right to survive. But as far as the shepherd is concerned, where their survival is dependent upon the continued existence of their sheep, and that in many cases, the wolf considers the shepherd just as an acceptable meal as the sheep, most shepherds aren't overly concerned about the rights of the wolf. The question is, does that argument even apply to this creature? Is it just doing what it has to do to survive? Well, no. The episode makes it very clear that the creature is capable of surviving off of two food sources. People, and salt tablets. Both work just fine. So then we have to look at, how did the creature act? When the creature first encountered humans, Nancy, it's the one time you could make the argument it's just doing what it has to do to survive. It doesn't know what humans are. It encountered a food source, so it ate. However, when the creature met Professor Crater, it learned about salt tablets, an alternate food source that it survived off of for over a year. And it knew that Kirk and company would be giving them more salt. It asked for the salt specifically. And when it went on the Enterprise, it saw lots of salt. At any point, it could have gone, "Boo! I'm a shape-shifting salt-eating creature. Please give me salt tablets. Otherwise, I might be tempted to eat you." But what did it do instead? As soon as the creature encountered Kirk, McCoy, and Mr. Body, it immediately started to manipulate their minds. And at the very first opportunity, it lured Mr. Body away so it could kill him, and then tried to cover it up. The next time it interacted with the Enterprise crew, it killed 2 people, then infiltrated the ship, and when it didn't easily get the salt shaker, killed again. Was in the process of trying to kill McCoy when it was stopped, and then it tried to kill Kirk. And in that instance, it literally had salt in front of it, and it still chose to go after Kirk. At every step along the way, it made the decision to kill to feed. This raises the specter of what Professor Crater had been doing. If he had enslaved the creature, did he use salt tablets to do it? To keep the creature on a starvation diet, to force it to do what he wanted? So that when the creature encountered the Enterprise crew, an alternate food source, extreme hunger drove it to act the way it did. Sadly, all too often, there are dogs who've been abused so badly that they're a danger to everything around them. And when we put them down, do we blame the dog? No, we hold the abuser accountable, but we still have to put the dog down. And if that was the case with this creature, the fact that it was the last of its kind makes it all the more tragic, because all of this happened because of the selfishness and evil behavior of one individual. So, what do you all think? Was Professor Crater just as big a victim in all of this as everybody else? Or was he the architect of his own demise and the demise of the creature? Tell me down below in the comments. At any rate, I hope I gave you all something to think about, and until next time, y'all be safe. If y'all are still here, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell. You can hear me yammer on about something else next time, and feel free to share this video far and wide.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.